I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. I asked them last minute, they were super gracious. I just had a couple thoughts that I want to share with you guys. And just before we do that, raise your hand if this is your first time being a delegate with us. Okay, wonderful. Welcome. Welcome to this crazy circus of a process that is, it's wild. And I hope your experience so far has been good. I hope you guys have learned some stuff. It is what I think a very backwards experience. You get thrown into something, into the most critical part, and then we have time after to talk and do training. It drives me absolutely insane. And so if you find yourself with a lot of questions and you're not sure what's going on, you're not alone. And so please ask, reach out to us. We wish that the system were backwards, that you got elected and we had some time to explain both the organization and the structure of the organization and then the process. So if you have a question that you're a little worried to ask and you're like, I know, it's kind of a dumb question. It's not a dumb question. If you don't know it, you need to know it. So I sat my own children down and I gave them an organization chart of the county and how it was structured and let them ask, and then they went, oh my gosh, I kind of get it. Same thing with caucus. We had a discussion about caucus, and we talked about why the caucus is important. And so I want to tell you guys why I think the caucus is important really quick, because we feel like there are people in our society and some in our own party who don't understand the value of the caucus and what it is. And so kudos to you for participating in it for the first time. The caucus is important because it is government brought to your neighborhood. There is no other system that will allow you to pick up the phone and to call your precinct chair or your house chair and then have them call me or someone on the executive committee and then get in touch with your elected official. You are only 2 to 3, possibly 4 phone calls away from everybody who votes on your money and your freedom. That is the caucus system. And anybody in your neighborhood, in your community, is that far away as well. If you remove the caucus system, you will be left with money and mailers and billboards, and money will win. And so do we get it right 100% of the time? No. Do we get it right the vast majority of the time? Yes, we do a really good job. And it's people like you who come, thank you, you guys do a good job. You come and you get the candidates, and I've never met such a sincere bunch who cares about really getting it right and representing their community. So this is representative government at its best. And so when people say caucus isn't good, let's get them on the primary. I've never had somebody who voted in the primary do the kind of work that you guys do. So thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you. This is part of the process too. I've been so excited. We have done the state school board debates. We also just barely scheduled the last one in our county, and that will be after our convention on the 24th, and that race is between Jim Moss and Cole Kelly. So if you're just interested in this subject, that'll be at Canyon View Junior High. It should be a really great debate forum. And we've been excited because these are really interesting conversations that are being had in education right now, and we think that they're vital. So we thank our wonderful 3 candidates for joining us. They were also gracious. They all accepted really quickly, and we're happy to come and do this for you tonight. I've asked Charles Wood, he is our vice chair, and he is going to moderate this for us tonight. We have some questions that we have used previously. We'll look for some paper. We ran down from the Salt Lake County Convention, so if you have a burning question, please let us know. We want you to be able to answer the questions that you need. We think we have some pretty decent ones here too. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chuck, and thank you guys for coming, and thank you so much for your participation in this process.
All right, so we're going to start out with candidate introductions. Before we do that, I'm just going to lay down some of the ground rules for the debate. First of all, you'll each get 2 minutes to introduce yourself. We'll start on the left with Mr. Boothe, and we'll come this way. And then the next question will start with Cari Bartholomew, and then we'll rotate down. And that way everybody gets a chance to answer first, and it seems to be a pretty fair process. If you are mentioned or called out in somebody else's answer, you'll have a minute to respond to any questions, and you'll have a minute to respond to each question as we ask them. One thing that came up in the last school board debate that I just want to clarify is, since Mr. Boothe is on the state school board, when we did the other debate, Mr. Hymas asked when somebody mentioned the school board, does he get to respond? The answer to that is no, unless you are singled out. So if you're singled out in the way you voted or anything like that, then you will have a chance to respond to that as well. And so Mike will be our timekeeper.
Right in front of us, so you can see it.
Would you prefer him to wait you, 45 seconds into your minute? Is that right?
45 seconds?
So you get a minute to respond to questions. So
Yeah, that's fine.
45 seconds warning. Does that work for you, Mike?
So I-
When they have 15 seconds left.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this is because it's an education, maybe it's not.
Do we have
So that one.
I'll just wait. I don't have any papers, so I'll just wait.
All right, so let's go ahead and start here on the end. You have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and tell people why you're in.
Folks, times are changing, and it's kind of difficult to keep up with all the changes. As I seek re-election to the Utah State School Board, District 13, I would appreciate the opportunity to continue the work that I began over 3 years ago. I'm passionate about children's joy in the journey. Each child needs academic excellence. Each child needs to experience the arts. Every child needs parents sharing with dedicated teachers and leaders of learning the challenge of opening doors to success in life. And every child needs to feel valued, seen, heard, and supported as they navigate their way through the growth, achievement, and acquiring the knowledge, skills, and dispositions for success in their lives. Recently, I read an article from the Sutherland Institute where the author suggested that parents and teachers need to have a handshake as a helpful analogy for understanding the healthy relationship between parents and teachers. Parents can and should direct their child's education, she said, be involved in their child's schooling, support children in non-school factors that impact learning, and get informed before making choices. The teachers can communicate with parents using a growing list of technologies and seek to be transparent about curriculum choices. Each must do what they can do to help each child succeed. My wife Susan and I have been practicing and living that model since 1987 when our oldest son Ross entered Park Elementary School in Spanish work. I've been involved with public school since 2004 as a board member in the Nebo School District. For 20 years, I volunteered my time and support. I'm committed to education. I appreciate your vote for me as continuation on the State School Board, District 13. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Thank you everyone, first of all, for coming out tonight. I had a whole thing that I was going to read, but I had this really amazing thing happen today. I was at another convention, and when I was there, a person came up to me and said, "Why is such a radical like you running for the school board?" And I thought, well, why am I a radical? And I asked her very calmly, I said, well, why do you think I'm a radical? And she goes, well, you're a homeschool mom, that's all you are. And I just kind of smiled. And I listened to her, and she was very, very kind of frantic. And she was a teacher, and she said, you are villainizing us. You are scaring people from wanting to go to public school. And we had this wonderful conversation where she was able to see me as a person, and I was able to see her as a person, and I was able to have this discussion with her about how I'm actually there for the teachers, for the students, and for the parents who are concerned that we are taking a hard left turn in our education. I'm there because I had this young woman who said to me, we know something's going wrong as they tell us that we should be more and more inclusive, but it's really making us more and more divided. But when is an adult going to stand up for us? I'm there for the parents who just yesterday had this huge issue at their school and they had no one that they could turn to. And so they called me and they said, hey, can you help us out here? And so I started to explain to them, because at heart that's what I am as an educator. And I believe in education, and I believe in this ability that every single child should have the right to prosper and to grow and to flourish, and that shouldn't be limited by ideology that that's been coming in for the last little while. Thank you so much.
Alyson Robertson, and I'm a mother of 5 children, one at each level of the public school system. I've got elementary school, middle school, junior high, high school, and I've got a daughter who's just in her first year at a public college. Obviously, that's a strong motivation for me to be involved in education issues, but it goes beyond that for me. Abraham Lincoln said, "The philosophy of education in one generation is the philosophy of the government in the next," and that is so crucial. I know all of you in this room who are parents have concerns that are specific to your children. All of you who are teachers have concerns that will be dealt with at the state school board at some point. I have been so grateful for the teachers that have touched my life, that have been there for my children, and it is important that we work together. That said, it is a time for some hard conversations, and I am so excited. It hasn't been that many years that the state school board has been an elected position in Utah, and it's been even fewer years that it's been able to go through the caucus system, and that those asking for your vote on the state school board can stand face to face with you and answer your questions and have the hard conversations that we need to have as the world drifts a little bit farther away from the values that I am trying to teach my children, that I know I share with the majority of the families in my community. And I have put a lot of time in researching this and being engaged at a lot of different levels over the years. My degree is in elementary education. I've served on the community council, on the year-end SAGE review test, and worked with legislators on bills over the years. And I'm really excited to be able to sit here and talk to you about the issues that I care very much about.
All right, for this next question, we'll start with Ms. Bartholomew. The question is, and I know you were sent some of these questions ahead of time. I'm not going in order, so just so you know.
Okay.
Do you think SEL programs teach students to focus on the positive or negative more?
Okay. Can I get there first to the page? Is it okay? No? Sorry. All right, well, anyways. Social and emotional learning is social and emotional compliance. It teaches our children to other each other. And I understand why when people hear words, they think that they sound really wonderful, but like I said when I opened about the person who just immediately thought that calling me an extremist was a perfectly fine and acceptable way to talk to a person. When you learn to other another person, you look at them and you say, oh, well, you don't agree with everything that I do, so you're problematic. And when you're problematic, what we do is we center around some at the exclusion of others. And that is really the focus of social and emotional learning. So what we're pushing on our children is this desire to be a global citizen, or we're pushing them especially to reject conservative values and move towards progressivism.
I think there can be confusion for people hearing that term for the first time. Social and emotional learning is what kids do as they grow up, especially in their education. Everything that they're learning has an impact on their social and emotional growth, right? SEL, capital letter acronym, is a specific program. It's there's specific grants funding specific programs, and they ask teachers to act almost like psychologists and ask children specifically about their emotions, coach peer counseling types of groups, talk about race, talk about gender, and no, I don't think that's the role of the public school system.
I think it's interesting that there are so many SEL, CRTs, DEIs, and other acronyms that are buzzwords, and for those of us who may not be in the heart of education, we may be confused by what they're referring to, because social emotional learning is something that we're all engaged in, hopefully, in order to exist side by side with one another in this beautiful state of Utah. I think it's interesting that in the past legislative session, the legislature passed Senate Bill 159. And believe it or not, this is what it's asking. It's asking teachers to be trained in helping our students acquire social skills such as accepting consequences and respecting boundaries, or emotional regulation skills such as accepting criticism, disagreeing appropriately, and following instructions. So we must seek, as school districts, parent and teacher input so that we are going to find a program that will teach those positive skills in a positive way so that they can interact in a tough world. Thank you.
All right, this question will start with Ms. Robertson. Ms. Robertson, right?
Yes.
Okay. Teacher collaboration through PLC programs. What is gained and what is lost?
Another acronym for you, PLC, Professional Learning Communities. When my daughter started in elementary school, we had this amazing principal, and she grouped the teachers at each grade level so that there were some more experienced teachers and there were some new teachers, and they collaborated and they helped each other with all the students in all the classes across the grade levels, and it was really successful. I remember thinking, man, when I first came out of education school, I would have loved a mentorship like this. So professional learning communities done organically like that are a part of the teaching process when done well by administrators. They're so useful. PLCs have more recently become attached to federal intervention programs where they come in to schools that they consider failing, and they have top-down objectives
About how to extend progress to students who've already mastered the current level content and how to close the gap for those still striving to grasp content, knowledge, and skills. What is lost is one more hour each week that could be spent in instruction. So they have to weigh these items at the local level to determine the return on their investment. Our NEBO teachers have considered that question and have embraced professional learning communities as a key component of student success.
I had the privilege of being part of these learning collaborations when I worked for American Preparatory Academy. And we would go through the grades, so it would be first through third and third through sixth. And it was amazing to work together and to have a plan that would continually grow. And every week we would meet and we would talk about each and every child and talk about their successes and their failures and how we could help each other. So when it's done right, this can be an amazing program. However, in February, I had a teacher call me and say, you know what, we're supposed to teach Ruby Bridges this week. And I'm really concerned because the people in my group are kind of pushing an activism narrative on this story, which is true. There's a story about Ruby Bridges where you're supposed to where you're supposed to teach the kids to be activists. And so if one person has one viewpoint and the others have a different viewpoint, there can be a lot of pressure to comply.
All right, Mr. Boothe will answer this question first. What are your thoughts on Common Core as a whole? Has it created subjective or objective standards?
Common Core has been around for a long time. 2010 is when the state of Utah adopted it. And we are currently in the middle of restructuring our mathematics and English standards for the state of Utah. We have a very clear process that invites hundreds and thousands of moments of input from parents, teachers, and professionals in those content areas. We're in the midst of that, and we invite all of you, if you have concerns about the standards as they currently are, to express yourself. There's been a pendulum swing in some of the work, and it goes from one extreme to another. We would love to settle in a balanced range where we can enjoy the best of all possible standards for both mathematics, K-12, and English. Thank you.
So Common Core standards were not created locally. When we moved here from Seattle, we thought that we'd be able to put our feet up and our head in the sand and relax because this is a nice conservative country or state, and our kid will be fine. But Common Core is not just a set of standards. but it's a road to nationalized curriculum. This was a progressive step in creating a nationalized education system. Common Core, while it creates standards at heart, is again teaching our children to rethink proven and often simple practices. I've worked, like I said, in a charter school, and I've used both because charter schools and public schools do have to meet those state standards. And I'm able to compare firsthand the joy in being able to teach a child versus having to teach a child very specifically to specific standards. I think the joy is in the first.
Those of you who do know me know that I've spoken a lot and written a lot and done a lot pushing back against Common Core for well over 10 years. I could summarize it into two categories. One, it was a move to national standards and tests, which was specifically prohibited by the Constitution. There are really good and conservatively championed issues of reasons why education should be a locally controlled, diversely organic enterprise. And two, the standards themselves were not high standards. Utah had higher ranked English language arts standards and higher ranked math standards when we agreed to adopt them. They hadn't even been written yet. It was theoretical. We've had them for over 10 years, as Randy said. The evidence is out. We were remediating students below where they were before we had Common Core, and it's definitely time to raise the bar and bringing our standards back up. Thank you.
All right, the next question we'll have Ms. Bartholomew answer first, and that is, student data hubs have been adopted by many districts. What protections have been put on this data, and will the data be deleted after a student graduates? Does it have the potential for a student's past to influence their future? And do you see any potential that data could be used outside of the school system?
I believe we are fooling ourselves if we think that our privacy is protected. I was subbing in a first grade classroom, and the kids would take their lanyard and it would screen into their Chromebook. And after it screened into their Chromebook, as the kids read, incorrectly mind you, as the kids read, a little thing would go by and it would take a picture of the kids. It would look at their eyes, it would look at their emotions, and it would take a picture from half of their waist up. So they're monitoring a lot more than we think in first grade classrooms in Nebo School District. And yes, I do believe that it goes further than that. When they're monitoring these things, it is pushing us towards ESG. Getting our kids really used to being monitored all the time and not having any questions.
That's a lot of questions for 1 minute. First of all, we got, along with Common Core, the first grant to build a P20 database, and they weren't adopted organically by the districts. Parents can't see what is collected, and it's not even housed in any education department. It's under the Department of Workforce Services. I followed this for a long time. I worked with Representative Andrick on a data privacy bill. So many issues that I could go into, but first of all, parents can't see what's in there. You can't correct it if it's wrong. As Cari said, they're adding more and more. We get new grants every couple of years. And not only is there potential that it'll be used for things besides education, it is being designed, specifically housed in the Department of Workforce Services as not an education database.
I feel like your question is fair. It's a challenging area. We need to all be actively involved in data privacy protection. Luckily, Utah has some of the strictest data privacy laws in the nation. And the legislature does require that data follows a student as they transfer from school to school in what they call an educational backpack. One of the top priorities at USBE is protecting student data. We have an office that is specifically geared and focused on that, and they consider every decision regarding data privacy and protection very carefully. We are all over this area. There's more money being spent. It's amazing the amount of money being spent to protect our children. And Representative Christensen said in committee meeting, we are killing a fly with a cannon when they put aside $1 million per year. It's very true that if there was a program we were going to try to kill that fly with a cannon, it would be data privacy. It's very important to our efforts.
All right, the next question, we'll have Ms. Robertson answer this. It's math standards are being reviewed by the USBE. Do you align more with how they are now, or do you think they need drastic changes?
I think they need drastic changes. And unfortunately, that's hard to do the way that Utah's adopted. So along with adopting national standards when we adopted Common Core, Utah was one of a minority of states that adopted the integrated approach, which means instead of teaching geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2, calculus, all the separate subjects, we decided to mix it all up and we do math 1, math 2, math 3, and it's not only different than all the other states, it's an investigation style. So along with the standards of math, we adopted standards of practice. I think standards should be very simple, clear, understand, and I favor a traditional math approach with the disparate subjects being taught.
I mentioned earlier that we're in the middle of the math review, and we are very interested in hearing from you. We would love to know your feeling as to whether we should be more traditional or more integrated as it has been over the last number of years. It is good to know that through the pandemic, Utah fared pretty well. It was the top in the nation in terms of math scores in the first testing that was done after the pandemic. Top in the nation. So there are many concerns, and we're addressing those with the help of parents and educators across the state. However, we can be grateful that we have had the program that we have had and that we are learning from the past to a brighter future in math education. Thank you.
I can only speak from a parent on this. I have taught a few math classes, and I've taught with sex and math, and so that's not Common Core. And I think that the very basics of teaching our kids a very simplified education in elementary school is much easier than teaching them the Common Core method that gets very confusing and, like I said, makes things much more complicated than they need to be. When my son was about to go into high school this year and we were looking to register him in math, I was very confused. It was very clear from one school where we had algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, calculus, to math 1, and I put it online and I'd ask all the parents, I'd say, what do we do here? And nobody knew. And if the parents can't help their kids, that's a problem that really does need to be revisited.
All right, this question will be answered first by Mr. Boothe. Many science classes now have students picking an environmental issue and doing a project to fix this problem. Do you see this as creating activists for political issues?
I think it's more an opportunity for children to think outside the box. They need hands-on experiences. This would be an important time to involve parents in discovering what issues they would like to highlight in these kinds of experiences in a science class. I have appreciated the help of the village in raising my children in important areas like the stewardship over our environment. Don't be a litter bug. One member of our board talked about her bear den of Cub Scouts going to the high school and picking up garbage after lunch, coming up with 3 huge bags of garbage. As seniors now ready to graduate, when they go to lunch, they're thinking twice because of the experience they had as bear cubs. And I'm so grateful for those experiences at the young age. Thank you.
So there's a difference between real science and the science. Real science can be questioned and tested and proven. And then there's the science, which can't be. When students are told to create a science project with only approved sources, that tends to remove the point of scientific inquiry. Our children are often used as political pawns, and the science is no exception. Not being able to question, or worse, being punished for questioning why we should eat bugs or not eat beef. Not being able, as an example, science should not be used to frighten our students, and truly educated students know that gluing themselves to the road won't actually prolong the earth.
I'm really glad Cari gave those examples, the beating of the bugs and the laying yourself in the street. Those are not science. Those aren't scientific activities. I actually do believe that the problems that we face in the world, whether it be energy or environment, are going to be solved by science. They are going to be solved by these kids who come up with a new way to purify water, or come up with a new way for electricity to be stored, or those things. That is science. But when we're asking our kids to talk about the policy of something or choose a side, that's not science.
All right, this question will be answered by Ms. Bartholomew first. Should boys and girls have sex-segregated bathrooms, sports, and locker rooms?
Yes. But I want to go a little bit further than that, because that's not the biggest thing. The biggest thing is the ideology that our kids are being taught. They're being taught to swallow a lie. And the more that they're taught to swallow the lie, eventually that becomes something that is palatable to them. That messes with their brains, and it messes with the brains of the other children. It's very hard for the teachers. They don't even know how they can look in the mirror and feel okay with the fact that they're having to accommodate a lie. We need to protect our kids. We need to protect our girls.
Yes. No qualifications. Just yes.
Of course, we want all students and faculty to feel safe and comfortable in their learning environment. New schools across the state are now building private stalls in bathrooms and locker rooms at a fairly high expense, but students will have their privacy and we will protect our children. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Robertson will answer this one next. What is your view on standardized testing, ACT, SAT, and AP tests?
Standardized testing can be a useful measure for some things. It's not the best as a feedback loop for the actual student or even the teachers most of the time, so I would say use it sparingly. That said, I am going to differentiate the standardized testing like ACT, SAT, things like that from the federally required year-end tests that are computer adaptive tests that have no frame of reference. Every student gets a different test. The parents, the teachers, nobody's getting useful information from them.
I think it's important to ask the question, what is the purpose of the standardized test? What do we want to achieve through the test? What information do we want to gather? Standardized tests, of course, need to be optional for parents and are clearly not the only measure for learning, but they do help to provide a bird's eye view. For example, the nation is scoring at a 20% average ACT and Utah scores at a 21% average. Also, about 25% of Utah students participate in university concurrent enrollment and advanced placement. Utah's most recent AP scores show our students performing in the top 5 states in the nation. I think it's critical that we very carefully ask the question, what is the purpose of the test? Thank you.
So teachers have to teach to the test, which takes away a lot of the innovation in the classroom. In our current day, with so much focus on DEI, SEL, ethnic studies, there's less and less focus on academics. These tests can be a sort of ideological metric and not based on merit. While I haven't seen that in classrooms yet, there are many things happening today that we just haven't seen before. As far as testing for higher ed, not every student is cut out for higher ed. So I do think that it should be something that people can opt out of. And I think that sometimes it's necessary and sometimes it's not, especially not these ones, as Alyson said, that are that just don't have the information that's valid.
My questions went to sleep, hang on. All right, this one will be answered by Mr. Boothe next. And it is, should schools form public-private partnerships with outside organizations? Is this innovation in education?
Hundreds of our career and technical education courses rely very much on these partnerships. National accreditation, in fact, requires industry input to keep academic standards relevant and on the cutting edge. We often see districts in the rural areas creating these partnerships to strengthen the offerings and to provide opportunities for students they may not have available when they can't find a qualified instructor in a given area. Like any other decision that is made, partners need to be chosen carefully, and partnerships must be evaluated regularly and either continued or discontinued based on the educational value for students in our specific districts and schools. Thank you.
So this is already happening. When I subbed in the public schools, students were to take out their Chromebooks and just work. This was in elementary, middle, and high school. The students loved it when I had them just take out their books and read. That's where we had the real discussion, and they seemed to really appreciate that. That's the kind of art of teaching that I think a lot of teachers have, well, they've reached out to me and they've said, we'd like to have back in the classroom. We don't want to just be facilitators kind of walking around the room. Now, what I'm worried about, once again, I know I'm the hot button topic person, is what's coming in these programs. I don't believe that those are being vetted strongly. I have seen some curriculums that have very much concerned me.
Yes. This is a question I wish I had a little bit of clarification on. There's a lot of variety of public-private partnerships. Randy mentioned our CTE programs, crucial, wonderful. Those kids headed towards those trades, they're invaluable, right? When we invite other private organizations, whether that be Planned Parenthood, DEI instructors, those types of things, not a fan of that. And there's another kind of public-private partnership that is social impact bonds, where we have kind of like betting, gambling with percentage return on kids learning. You can look a little bit into that, but it's public money, but privately, no public oversight, and so I'm really opposed to social impact bonds.
All right, for this question, we'll start with Ms. Bartholomew. If competency-based education continues, will it eventually require an IEP for every student that will most likely have to be met through tech or AI?
I would say yes. We've decided that every single child is trauma impacted due to COVID. And because they're trauma impacted, there are certain competencies, there are certain things that they need to learn. A lot of those things are being taught through online. And again, when I was a substitute, I walked around the room and I watched the kids answer questions. And even if they answered them wrong, like a balloon would show up and say, "Congratulations." The main point was just to watch these kids. And so I am concerned that AI, which we have seen already what AI has done when it takes George Washington and makes him black, right? I mean, what exactly is it that our kids are being taught, and are our teachers still going to be usable in that kind of, I don't know. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. You guys are fine.
Competency-based education, another one of those acronyms that at face value sounds good. At face value, it just means if you already know a subject, you don't have to take that class again. You can test out of it and move on to the next skill. You can either do that with a class as a whole or one item at a time. And yes, every implementation of competency-based education has relied on technology and computers to do that, because obviously you can't have a teacher with 30 kids all moving at different levels. There are a lot of problems to formal competency-based education. It's a kind of a workforce model, and I did an hour-long presentation on competency-based education that I'll link on my website if you want to delve into that rabbit hole.
So an IEP is required under federal law for students with disabilities. Competency-based education, on the other hand, is an idea that allows students more flexibility on how and when they show mastery of skills. Instead of teachers teaching to the middle, they may allow them to progress at their own rate in key core areas. When teachers work with ability groups in math and reading so that even students who have already mastered the content still have a year of growth, it's an example of competency-based education, regardless of whether or not they use instructional technology. I believe that two great examples that you might be interested in looking at are Mount Timpanogos High School and the Catalyst program at Davis School District. Outstanding personalized competency-based programs that are having great results with some children in the state of Utah. Thank you.
All right, this will be the last of the questions that were sent to the candidates, and then we'll get some questions that I've gotten from some of you in the crowd. Either Christy gave them to me, or one or two of you have my cell number and have texted them to me. This question is, if districts and teachers continue to use outsourced programs for all subjects, will a teacher end up as facilitators of technology programs? And do you think these companies have a political bias?
Who's starting?
I think it's you.
It's Ms. Robertson.
Okay. We are already doing this a lot. Like I said, I have kids at all levels of public education, and they are on computers a lot. And so teachers are facilitators. I've had issues where my kids have had curriculum that no teacher had ever seen before. The kids are seeing it for the first time, and the teacher's just behind a dashboard, unlocking, locking, opening quizzes, and things like that. I prefer a teacher to be teaching my kid, especially if they're sitting over at a school. Otherwise, they can just stay home and be online with me, I guess. But it is turning teachers into facilitators when we are doing more and more tech. And yes, there are a lot of biased, unvetted, inaccurate lessons coming in through the tech because of the way it is. Nobody can vet all of the resources sometimes before the kids see them.
The power of an excellent teacher is absolutely phenomenal. The difference they can make in a child's educational journey is critical. I am committed to good teachers and supporting those teachers with leaders of learning. I'm committed to allowing parents and encouraging parents to work with teachers so that the very most important needs of each individual child are met. Anytime I reflect for a moment on my grandchildren and children and their experience in public education and the positive experience that they had, it was tied in some way to a strong teacher. Outsourcing, turning to digital formats,
and digital sources of educational products can be a nice help in the learning process, but will never replace the teacher.
I'm a little bit mortified because I answered the last question with this answer. So yes, our children are currently doing much of their work on the Chromebook. Parents in many cases do not even know what is happening. The excuse is that, again, every child is trauma impacted and as a result is living through both COVID and social justice events of 2020. And this will continue to be the main focus of education until our children have personalized learning plans that teach them what is acceptable. This is very concerning. We do have a political leaning in the online digital things, and oftentimes teachers don't even know. They'll get a parent will call and say, what did my child just do as an assignment? And then a teacher will say, I didn't even see that. And sometimes it's dealt with and sometimes it's not. I'd like to see it dealt with.
All right, this question will start with Mr. Boothe. A lot of parents are concerned about pornography and inappropriate materials in the schools. What is or should the USBE be doing to mitigate this problem?
This is a critical issue. And we have been working to develop policy that would guide local school boards, local LEAs in their important work of protecting our children. We're currently, this coming week, meeting to finalize a guidance document that ties every type of review, whether it is with sensitive materials, with instructional materials, with library materials, with subjective sensitive, objective sensitive, all of the various forms. We are tying that to state law and providing important guidance for each district so that our children will be protected in every district of the state. Thank you.
What we need to realize is sometimes we are protected and sometimes we are placated. If you listen, you hear the words, we are providing guidance. Guidance is not the same as saying, no, porn does not belong in our schools.
I'm going to agree strongly with Cari here. I don't think it should take a panel and a board and a legislature to look at certain materials that my kids were exposed to at an elementary school and no, this is inappropriate and it should be gone. There doesn't need to be a review. It's taken us 3 years as parents working with Representative Ivory in the legislature to get a bill specific enough to say that. If something is objectively obscene, according to Utah's childhood obscenities laws, there is no review process. I don't know why it's taken us so long to get here. I'm glad we're here, but I hope that we can have adults in positions of trust who can make that judgment without a committee.
All right, this question will start with Ms. Bartholomew. Is there a specific curriculum this fall that you can point to as an indication that CRT is going on in schools?
Yes, we're getting ethnic studies in 2024 unless that gets stopped. Ethnic studies is from Christine Slater. When ethnic studies is guided by CRT, it is taking things in the right direction. The goal of ethnic studies is 2 points. The first is to teach every child why they are oppressed. The second is to teach them to dismantle the system. So what happens is that our district will come in and they'll say, oh, we're bringing ethnic studies and everybody's going to get excited. We're going to celebrate cultures. But it's not about celebrating cultures. It's about teaching your child why they are a victim. And if they're not a victim by race, then they're going to be a victim by gender. This is absolute fact. I have it in a book over on my table. You're welcome to come see it. Thank you.
I think parents will be a little bit reassured that it's not part of our official standards in the state to teach DEI. There are instances of DEI creeping in, whether it be through something that a teacher's brought in or a third party or something like that. I think they did an audit and gathered reports from all the different schools, districts, and it wasn't uniform. It doesn't mean that there's not a lot of pressure and a plan, like Cari said, to have ethnic studies and have it be more direct. Our legislature has taken a stand and specifically outlined what we as a state want and don't want in terms of DEI. I think hope the school board will align with that, and we can prevent it from getting worse.
The ethnic studies core standards and curriculum are all about local control. So Cari and Alyson's concern and invitation to get involved in your local district is so critical. There is no official ethnic studies standards at the state level, but we have identified ethnic studies connections in 20% of the current K-12 core standards across content areas. The Ethnic Studies Commission is still in the process of discussing what recommendations they want to make to USBE regarding ethnic studies, and the bill, Senate Bill 244, that required ethnic studies to be incorporated has been now postponed and will not be put into place until 2025 after the study has been thoroughly reviewed and taken back to the legislature for their approval.
All right, the next question will be answered first by Ms. Robertson. What are your thoughts about the USBE, for those of you, we've used the term, but it's the Utah State Board of Education, giving student information to marketing companies through vendor exclusions in FERPA, and allowing these marketing companies to solicit businesses from the poorest among us?
So this goes back to the student privacy issue. I don't know if we have the strongest student data privacy issues laws in the state. I did help consult on some of those. I think we have a long way to go. We have a lot of ed tech vendors. Our kids are on tech a lot. We don't have transparent contracts for how we handle the data. We don't have a lot of things. Just in the last month, the Federal Trade Commission is changing the Children's Online Privacy Act, removing parents as a steward and putting in school administrators as decision makers. A similar thing did happen to FERPA under the Obama administration, took out parents, put in an authorized personnel, which included ed tech vendors. Utah is going to have to be stronger in our data privacy laws than the federal laws, and I think we still have a lot of work to do.
I look to our legislators to take a strong stand. We speak about data privacy on various contracts and various agenda items that come to the state board almost every month. And there's no question that we must keep up our guard and we must protect our children. I would personally not be voting in favor of any release of data information to other parties for purposes of selling something or marketing something to a student.
I'm just going to say that I think that the idea of getting parents out of anything is absolutely unacceptable.
All right, we're going to give each of the candidates 2 minutes to give their closing remarks. I would encourage all of you to go talk to them, and I would encourage them to share any information they have about how to contact them. We started the last question with Ms. Robertson, so we will have Mr. Boothe begin with our concluding remarks.
You're welcome to go to randyboothe.com. My website has a lot of answers to questions that you may have and details some of what I've been doing over the past 20 years in education. As I recently went to the country of Zimbabwe, I visited a school in the capital city of Harare. The school was organized by an 83-year-old grandfather who, with volunteer teachers, were teaching over 750 students every day as volunteers. They had no public education, and the commitment of those teachers and the commitment of that grandfather to not only educate, but to feed and provide support for these children, many of whose parents had died from AIDS and were being raised by grandparents and aunts and uncles, was heartwarming and life-changing. I made a commitment on that day as we sat in the hot sun with 750 children standing in rows in front of their flag, that I would commit myself to the end of my life to doing anything that I could possibly do to strengthen the educational opportunities for my children and grandchildren, for yours, for mine. I'm grateful for the privilege that it has been mine to serve in education for these years, and I look forward to many years in the future where I can contribute to the safety and the achievement and the joy of our children's public education journey. Thank you.
We're living in a time that people call, that a philosopher called repressive tolerance, which means that we validate some voices and we don't validate others. Today on the Utah State School Board, the conservative voice is not being validated. Our voices as rural Americans are not accepted. We are dismissed. We are considered not to have enough insight, even when it comes to the raising of our children. I am running because I believe that every single child has a right to be seen and has a right to be valued. That does not mean that we put them into collectives, but that we see them and raise them up again so that they can come to a point of flourishing. We cannot center around some children at the exclusion of others, and that is what I have seen over and over and over again in the name of progress. All children matter, and they don't matter as cogs in a wheel, but as individuals. I'm a mother. I'm an educator. I am an upstanding member of my society and of Utah. I speak to senators. I speak to representatives. I advocate for the things that matter to you, and I have been doing that for the last 3 years. I have been the voice that listens when other people won't. And when people won't listen, then I go to another school board member and I ask them for help and assistance. We should not be in that place. You need somebody who represents you, and I believe I can do that, not only for you, but for your children, for teachers who feel that their hands are tied, and for anybody else who just wants to see our world kind of get back to normal.
Our country, as a real self-governing country, at some point decided that public education was worth a collective investment. We tax each other and we pay for public education. Thomas Jefferson argued that we could not be ignorant and free. It is such an important thing, but there are differing philosophies of education. If I were to summarize it super broadly, there's the education for opportunity, self-governance, self-advancement, self-determination, and then there's educating for a specific outcome. It's short-sighted, it's politically biased, and we are the ones who need to be engaged in this and choose. As parents, as people who sit in elected positions, we need to have these conversations. And I want to thank Randy and Cari for being a part of this race, for allowing us to have some of these conversations, and thank you as delegates for being here and taking the time. It's a sacrifice from all the other things that you could do, but I just don't know if there's a more important thing that we vote for because of the impact it has on our future and our communities. I've spent the last week and a half trying to call every single one of you, and if I haven't got to you yet, I hope I do to get to connect with you before convention. If not, get on my website, get my contact information, and reach out to me. It's Ally for School Board, ALY, the number 4, schoolboard.com. I am so happy that this is an elected position, that it's a position that can go through the caucus, that we can talk about these issues face to face, and I will continue to listen to you and hear you and work really hard on the state school board. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank our candidates one more time. Can we give them all a round of applause? I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to let Christy take over. And that is, I keep telling folks when they ask me about the convention system that I would rather have folks who were vetted by my neighbors elected to office than people who were picked off the TV for their smile that big money paid for. So thank you for doing this.
I agree with Chuck there. Okay, so our convention is next Saturday. Our credentialing begins at 7:30 in the morning. Our call to order is at 10 o'clock. We will have food trucks there. We very much, as a leadership body, want to communicate our thanks to you guys for willing to do it, but also that it is an important thing. There has been in the past this culture of let's hurry up and get out of there, and we want to just do the business. You guys got elected, so please stick with us as we get through that day, you know, any efforts to rush us through and not give these candidates and you guys the opportunity to do this in the right way, we'd really appreciate if you support that. I just wanted to leave you with a thank you for our wonderful candidates, and thank you to you guys. This has been a conversation that I feel like had a lot of substance and a lot more meat. And our goal as a leadership team, I heard this quote a little while ago. It said, "Falsehood flies and the truth comes limping after, so that when good men come to be undeceived, it is too late." And our goal has been to shorten that, to bridge that gap between when those things happen. We know there are things happening in the world. We can't figure out exactly how these pieces are working together, and they are harming us. And so our goal is to help you guys bridge that gap, and I think that they helped you guys do that tonight. So we will see you next Saturday, and thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, Cari.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
I'm drinking my water still.